Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for joining us on this slightly shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk today. We are done at 5:30 because the women's NIT continues tonight, and the season continues for the Mini Cats. K-State women's basketball, they will be in action coming up at 6 o'clock, pregame at 5:30, so that is when we are getting the hell out of here today. So we're going to jam-pack a full 3-hour show into 2.5 hours from now until 5:30. We would love for you to be a part of the show as well. Hit us up on our text line, 785-272-9429, or check us out on YouTube. You can watch the show and hop into the comment section. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. We've got plenty to get to over the course of these next 2.5 hours, and we will start things off here in just a minute, talking about the Sweet 16 and K-State. How do they stack up against the rest of the teams in the Sweet 16? One well-known college basketball media member says K-State is the 13th best team remaining. That's dumb. Sports Illustrated has them 8th. Where do we actually believe K-State stacks up against the Houstons and Alabamas and Michigan States and Xaviers and everyone else who is left? We'll get to that here in just a moment. Also this hour, we'll get to some of the latest on the Kansas City Chiefs. They're getting the band back together on the defensive line. We already knew Turk Wharton coming back on a 1-year deal. How about Derek Nottie for the second year in a row coming back on a 1-year deal? Don't look now, he's one of the longest tenured Chiefs. This is now going to be 6 years for Derek Nottie with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we will get to that and the plan for the defensive line in Kansas City coming up here in just a moment. Also this hour, we've got some Random Question Tuesday to get to. Later on in the show, we'll talk more NCAA tournament and why average age has correlated almost perfectly with success in this NCAA tournament. We'll explain what that means coming up in a little bit. Michael Swain is going to join us today for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. We'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. What is wrong with you? All our good, normal Tuesday stuff here on 580 Sports Talk. And again, the text line and the comment section on YouTube open to you throughout the show today. Let's jump right into it, Dan, with the Kansas State Wildcats gearing up for the Sweet 16. Media availability tomorrow for K-State. Jerome Tang and some of the players will be speaking from Madison Square Garden. That's so cool. I know they do, preseason events and whatnot all the time at MSG, and there are other things that go on there, but like a big do-or-die game in the mecca of all arenas. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah, the guys on Mic'd Up were talking about this earlier. I was on with them for Crosstalk. There just aren't a lot of venues like that for basketball anymore, and they're pretty much all college venues that just raise the hair on the back of your neck when you walk in.
Yeah.
Cameron Indoor, Allen Fieldhouse, obviously. The Madison Square Garden is maybe the one that is an NBA arena that resonates the most. And particularly when you think about what it represents, not just to basketball, but to New York basketball. And maybe New York basketball doesn't mean what it used to mean, but to people in New York, it sure does.
Yeah,
And Kansas State's got 4 of those guys on their team for whom this really is the mecca. And so it's an awesome opportunity for them. And I mean, there's no better place, like no grander stage.
No,
you could argue, take all the arenas and all of the gyms and all of the centers and forums in this country, and there may be no grander stage than the one under the lights at the Madison Square Garden.
No more well known. It's a big deal for everything. So it's obviously going to be such a cool event for K-State in particular. But I wanted to ask, where does K-State stack up among the 16 teams remaining that are still playing for a national championship? Of the 363 teams in Division I, we are down to the last 16 of them playing this year. The NIT doesn't count. I think it's fair to say K-State is not at the very top of the list. I think it is also fair to say K-State is not at the very bottom of the list. I think it's very obvious who is at the bottom. It's Princeton. Where does K-State belong in that group? And before we get our specific answers, here is where a couple of different publications have put K-State. Sports Illustrated came out with their power ranking, and they have K-State 8th. I think that's fair enough. That's fine. I might go a little bit higher. That's relatively understandable, though.
Well, if you think about it, they were the 11th total seed
Yep.
in the tournament. So that's where the committee started. When they put this tournament together, Kansas State rather was the third seed. So they were the 11th ranked team in the tournament.
So yeah, I mean, when you consider a team ahead of them, like Kansas is gone, like Purdue is gone, teams like that, Marquette is gone,
Arizona is gone. Jump you up a few lines.
Yeah, so that sounds at least somewhat reasonable. Then you get rankings like the one from Andy Katz of NCAA.com. And Andy Katz has been doing this for a long time. He's at ESPN for forever. He's been covering college basketball forever. His round of 32 power ranking was just incomprehensibly bad.
It was really, really mind-numbing. Yes.
He had Pitt as like a top 10 team. Here is his ranking for the Sweet 16. Alabama number 1. I think that's fair. I would also put Alabama number 1. He's got Houston 2, Texas 3. I think I'd flip those. UCLA, Gonzaga. There's your first 5. UConn, Arkansas, Xavier. That's 6 through 8. Where's K-State here?
Now I'm starting to ask some questions.
Number 9, Michigan State. Number 10, Miami. 11, Tennessee. 12, Creighton. 13, Kansas State. He only has Kansas State above San Diego State, Princeton, and Florida Atlantic. What? How? How can you possibly watch what Kansas State has done through the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, see their body of work, see their talent level, their coaching caliber, and say, yeah, there's only 3 teams worse than this that still are left in the tournament? Where's the logic behind that? You don't have to answer that. It's rhetorical. There isn't any.
I mean, if you were totally beholden to KenPom, right, which has been kind of a late adopter to Kansas State and who has punished them throughout the year for playing a really weak non-conference strength of schedule, which after the round of 32, Kansas State's non-conference strength of schedule ranks 255th in the country. It is the second worst of any of the teams still going, behind ahead of only Princeton. Kansas State ranks 12th among teams still going in the tournament in the KenPom, ahead of Florida Atlantic, Michigan State, Miami, and Princeton. They're only 1 spot ahead of Florida Atlantic, 21st overall. Florida Atlantic coming in at number 22. So even if you were beholden to KenPom, you wouldn't rank them 13th. You wouldn't rank them quite that low. It does seem to be a little bit off to me because, I think the top 3 are very clear-cut. I think the top 2 are very clear-cut for sure. Alabama and Houston, they're the 1 seeds left. They were obvious 1 seeds from like January onward. They've done nothing to suggest that they don't deserve to be 1 seeds since then. Those are 1 and 2 in whatever order you care to put them. The metrics have always liked Houston better. Alabama, 31-5 in the SEC. Like, you can order them in any order you want. There's some injury concerns for both teams. I'm not going to quibble too hard on 1 and 2. It might be 1 and 1A.
By the way, and this was I was directed in this direction by our guy Vance in the YouTube comments. ESPN has K-State as the 8th best team remaining. So again, right about in the middle. They said if they were reseeding the entire tournament, they'd put them as a 2.
And that feels about right.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because I would have them in my top half of teams. Like I would have Alabama and Houston cleanly ranked ahead of them. I would rank Texas ahead of them. I would have Texas 3rd. After that, probably go UCLA 4th, even though obviously have some questions about how their defense is going to look against really elite wing players. Haven't really seen any of those with the injury to Jalen Clark. So I'd have UCLA 4. I'd put UConn 5, Gonzaga 6. And then this is about my landing spot for K-State, 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think if you just go, I mean, you can even go bracket by bracket here and just say, all right, which of these teams is K-State clearly better or clearly worse than, even in their own? Like, they could lose to Michigan State. I'm not saying this because I think they're going to whoop Michigan State. There's no chance they lose. Are they better than Michigan State? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Coaching-wise, you got the Coach of the Year versus a Hall of Famer, but everything else, give me Kansas State. Are they better than Tennessee? I think so. Especially without Zakai Ziegler?
Yeah, I think they're better than Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler for sure. Without him, they are they're an old team and they're a physical team. And we saw what happened when they ran up to a younger team and got to play Aussie rules basketball for 40 minutes and had one player have his best game since December.
Yeah.
We saw what that looked like for Tennessee, but they're an older team. And we're going to talk about that a little later on. But they're big and they're not particularly fast.
No.
I love that matchup for Kansas State. If that's the Elite Eight matchup for Kansas State, I would go in feeling pretty confident
If you
for Kansas State. I mean, obviously they got to get there first. Both teams do.
Yeah.
Because Florida Atlantic's a lot quicker than Tennessee too,
Mhm.
and could create some problems for Tennessee in that way.
I think Florida Atlantic is pesky, but I think K-State is better than them. K-State, best team left in their region, I think, by far. The West, you could probably make an argument for all four teams. Now, I think K-State is certainly better than Arkansas, but I think KU's a better team than Arkansas too, and Arkansas got them. But the other three, UConn, Gonzaga, UCLA, I think it's fair to put all three of those above K-State. Now, you could make an argument the other way too. You could say, hey, you were just mentioning UConn's guards.
I like K-State's guards a little better, but UConn size would be a big problem, I think, for Kansas State.
There's no Sonogo in purple.
No.
Nobody like that in purple.
No, and the guys who can move like him aren't strong enough, and the guys that are that strong, A, there aren't any, and B, they can't move like he does.
I think Gonzaga is an interesting one. I think Gonzaga might make the Final Four. I think they are good enough to get to that point. I think Timmy is playing some of his best basketball right now, and he's played a whole lot of it.
Yeah, he's a man on a mission, no question.
He would be the best player in that game. But again, guard play, I think, is pretty close to even. Gonzaga, I don't think, has a clear advantage there by any means. And again, K-State has the ability to make shots. And you need to be able to win in games where you don't shoot the ball well. But also, if you're telling me, all right, final 5 minutes, close game, do you trust K-State to make enough shots? My answer is yes. And if you can do that, you can beat Gonzaga. Look at the games Gonzaga has lost this year. Specifically, look at the St. Mary's game, because that was the toughest team that they had to play multiple times over the course of the year. Yes, K-State and St. Mary's play a very different brand of basketball. Very different. But St. Mary's, in the game they beat Gonzaga, they made a bunch of shots. Logan Johnson made shots. Aiden Mahaney made shots. K-State's got that ability. They've got shot makers. UCLA is the other one. And again, you want to talk about defense and just the hand you're dealt right now. If you gave me full strength UCLA, honestly, I'd probably put them ahead of K-State. But they're not. Jalen Clark is not playing for them. He's their best defensive player. You lose that guy, even for a good defensive team overall, that's going to hurt you. So I think, again, I'd probably put UCLA ahead of K-State, but I think there's certainly an argument that you could say, no, I would like K-State better in that matchup. I think there's no doubt about that. There's a couple teams on the top half of the bracket, too. Like Alabama, I'd put ahead of them. Houston and Texas, I would both put ahead of K-State. I would put Alabama, Texas, Houston in that order, I think. Can K-State beat Xavier? Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be actually a great game. It would have to be the national championship, but I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I think those are two teams that are probably pretty similarly matched, I would say. Xavier has been a much better offensive team, one of the best offensive teams in the country this year, but Kansas State, I think, is a better team than they are defensively. And Xavier's been able to figure it out, and they might be tougher defensively without Zach Fremantle, but they're still, that's still 15 points a game that they're trying to have to patch together here and there, and have been able to do it against teams that they've been like a lot more athletic than the first two games in. I have some questions about how that's going to hold up against Houston.
I think, looking at the entire bracket right now, and I know this strays from the original point a little bit, I think the most fun matchup, in terms of styles and players you could get in the Final Four, should K-State get to that point. Alabama's the best overall team. I think K-State Creighton would be like game of the year kind of stuff. I really do think
it would be some bucket trading going on in that game.
Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, Baylor Shireman and Trey Alexander and freaking Arthur Kaluma, and like Creighton's just got so many shot makers. That to me is the game that, as a neutral fan, I think I would most want to see just for fun basketball.
Would be the most kind of styles make fights sort of matchup that Kansas State could play the rest of the way. I think it'd be fun to watch them play Gonzaga. I think that
it would be fun.
I would say that Timmy would be, as you mentioned, I think he'd be the best player on the court in that matchup. But thinking about Gasson and Tomlin and Eziola throwing those guys at him and just making Timmy work as much as you can is the key.
Yeah.
Like you have to make him work hard. You have to make him make difficult passes out of double teams. You can't give him the space to get off the hook. Like, it's a lot easier said than done. But after I watched how hard those bigs for K-State played against Oscar Tshiebwe, and look, Tshiebwe got his, right? 25 and 18, but Kansas State won that game. So I would be fascinated to see how Kansas State's bigs, how hard they'd have to play to limit, and not just Timmy, but Julian Strother as well, who's a future NBA guy at the stretch at the 4 for them. So that would be, to me, that would be another one that would be really fun.
That particular matchup, it just feels like, if you're talking about it from a general theme of how you win that game, you just can't let their best player beat you. Like, you cannot let Drew Timme put up 28 points or 27, whatever he did against TCU. You cannot let that guy beat. If Rasheer Bolton goes nuts and scores 25 and you lose, I mean, that's tough. That sucks, but you have to do whatever you can to stop Drew Timme in that matchup. I don't think the gap, like, do you think there's any team in the entire bracket that's left that you say this is a nightmare matchup for K-State? Like, there are obviously some where they would be underdogs, Alabama, Houston, Texas, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any matchup where you say, oh my God, that looks like a disaster?
Honestly, like, physically, I would probably say UConn, but even then, like, Kansas State can get a foothold with their guard play being maybe a little better than UConn's guard play. Houston is so physical, and the way that they rebound in particular would make them, like, it kind of be like the Kentucky game again when it comes to, boy, you're going to give up some offensive rebounds in this game because of the way Houston hits the glass. So that wouldn't be an ideal matchup. But when you're this far in the tournament, you know, as long as your seed doesn't start with a 1, generally speaking, you can get anybody, you know, one game, win or go home situation. So I'm sure that in that Kansas State locker room, their attitude is, hey, we belong here, and why can't we win the next 4 games?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to go 4-0 the next 2 weeks. Why can't it be them?
So that's my overall point, I guess, is that I think they've got as good of a chance as anyone, and they'll be underdogs in a few hypothetical matchups, but there's no one. Houston's the closest thing. There's no one who I'd say, oh my God. Well, it was nice knowing you. Like, it was nice to see you. It's not going to end well for you.
Couple of questions from the text line I want to get to real quick here. You can hit us up on the text line 785-272-9429. Somebody from the 402 asking if anybody is going to be live from Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, no. That 18.5 hour drive is not quite in the works for us. But hey, they win 2 more and get to Houston. That drive's half as long. You never know.
That's right.
So, but we'll have the guys from Mic'd Up had audio today or we'll have audio tomorrow from the podium there at MSG. So we'll continue to have plenty of coverage on that on our Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship.
Yep.
The other question from the 913 was the little kid's legendary game, referring to Marquise Noel, and an addendum about that in just a moment. Will that give him a possibility to get to the association, the NBA? When you look at the NBA, the modern NBA, and how good you've got to be 5'8" or less and get to the league, like, it is a extremely high bar to clear. And Marquise Noel, for all of the things he does exceptionally well, quickness, passing, ball handling, he's only at 34% three-point shooter, and you're giving up a lot on defense against bigger guards in the league. That's not me saying no. That's me saying it's an uphill climb, even with a great tournament. Even if he goes full Kemba Walker, one of his heroes, and leads the Kansas State Wildcats to the national championship, even that might be not more than a summer league invite for him. Probably not drafted, but a summer league invite. Maybe a 2-way contract at some point. Because I don't want to say never about somebody who has made the leap in his game that Marquise Noel made this year. But, I mean, think about the guys who've been 5'8" or shorter and had NBA careers. It is such a short list. Muggsy Bogues,
Earl Boykins,
Spud Webb, my guy Earl Boykins, one of my favorites.
Earl Boykins.
Like, that might be the closest, because Muggsy Bogues was like one of the greatest defensive players in college basketball in his time, and was able to translate that skill into the league. And Spud Webb was unbelievably, won a dunk contest. Yeah. An unbelievable athlete. And Earl Boykins could get buckets from anywhere. Like, I don't know what Earl Boykins shot in college, but I'm going to wager it was better than the 38% Marquise Noel shot this year.
Yeah. If you're at that height, I mean, you need to be truly elite at something. And Noel is a great college player, but I don't see it happening. And
Boykins' senior year, he was 41% from three and 47% from the field.
I hate to be a hater because I like Marquise Noel, and he's a great player. He'll play somewhere. He will have a professional career.
And Boykins averaged 26 a game. Granted, that's the MAC, but still, 26 a game is 26 a game.
Do you know how many players are currently in the NBA who are under 6 feet tall?
It's not more than a dozen.
It is 2. And one of those players is primarily a G leaguer. McKinley Wright, Colorado guy.
Yeah.
He is on a 2-way contract.
Mm-hmm.
The only full-time NBA player who is under 6 feet tall is Jordan McLaughlin of the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you have not heard of him, you are not alone.
USC.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's one. That I believe that it's something like that's the fewest ever. Like we've never had this few short guys in the NBA before. So I hate to say never, but I think it would be against literally all odds.
Yes, I think a great way to get the best out of Marquise Noel would be to tell him he can't do something.
That's true.
Because he has been so remarkable. I mean, average 2.5 steals a game, 17 a game in the Big 12, a first-team all-conference player, unbelievable foul shooter. But again, 35 from deep, 39 from the field, as opposed to what a guy like Boykins, who was 2 inches shorter, was doing in his college days. Like that was the kind of player you had to be. And even Boykins did not have a smooth road to an NBA career.
There are roughly 450 active NBA players on rosters, roughly. 16% of them are under 6'2". Yeah. 28 players in the whole NBA are under 6'2". So it'd be awesome. Don't put money on it. That's all I'm going to say. We'll get to more tournament talk a little bit later on in the show, including why age has played such a big role in success in this NCAA tournament. Right now, though, we've got to get to a quick commercial break. We'll play Random Question Tuesday right after this on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk, just getting started on this Tuesday afternoon. We'll talk some Chiefs in just a few minutes. Right now, though, it's time for Random Question Tuesday. If we were to go to a gym right now, not like a gymnasium, but like a Crunch Fitness or something.
Planet Fitness, 24-hour fitness, place like that. Okay.
We were going to walk in. Where would you go where you would like feel like you fit in the most? Like you go into the bench press, you go into the track, you get on the treadmill, stair climber. Where would you gravitate toward? Where you'd be like, oh yeah, I'll fit in with this group.
Absolutely not the weights. No, probably the elliptical machine. Go to the elliptical.
All right.
I can bang out 15, 20 minutes on the elliptical.
All right.
Call it a warm up and maybe get some lightweight work in.
Okay. I thought of this because I'm going to the gym after work today, and I never go do weights ever because even at the public gym in Lawrence, like everyone there clearly like has a plan and knows what they're doing and is carrying around a gigantic jug of water and has a weight belt on and everything. I so out of my element. So I never do it because I feel out of place. If there's a track, I'll go for a run. I'll get on the bike, the stationary bike, maybe the incline one, get on that for a little bit. All about the cardio for me. And heart is going to be freaking pumping.
Yeah, that's what I get the cardio in. Maybe if I want to show off a little bit, and I got nobody to show off to or no desire to show off to anybody, but I might load up the leg press. I've always been able to the inverted or the incline leg press. I've always had a pretty strong lower half and could probably load up and get a couple of leg presses in at an impressive weight.
Love leg day.
As long as maybe I had help exiting the building or climbing up any stairs or down any stairs.
If you were going to do some sort of upper body weight, what would it be?
Upper body?
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know. Probably like, so I play baseball and I was a pitcher, and we learned how to do, they're called the Job exercises to strengthen your rotator cuff. And you do those intentionally with very light weights, like no more than 5 pounds. I go do those because people would say, oh, that's with a purpose. He's not crazy weak or anything.
Yeah.
He's doing that intentionally to strengthen a certain part of his body. So no risk in getting mocked or made fun of or anything like that. I just get some Jobs in, about 10 Jobs in, and a cycle of Jobs, and call it good.
I'm getting on the lat pull down.
Oh, sure.
Pull down bar. Oh yeah. Get little front, little back. You can look as into it or not into it as you want. That's what I would do.
So you're going to, when's the last time you went to the gym?
I went on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But generally I just go to run.
Okay.
Because it was too cold out to go running, and I don't like people like watching me do stuff at the gym because again, I feel like eyes are on me and I feel creeped out. But yeah, I'll just go run inside. I can't do a treadmill though. Like I need to have things moving in front of me. I like the stationary, I just get bored and my mind wanders, and even if like a TV makes it a little bit better, but I find it easier to kind of get in the zone when I'm actually going somewhere, even if that somewhere is just the same oval over and over.
So let me think. The last time I went for a run was, let me do the math on this here, 1, 2, 3 presidential administrations ago. I hate running. I get it. I hate running. I have no desire to run. I think people who love to run for fun, I look at them like I tilt my head sideways like a dog when I hear people talk about, oh, I did this fun run, or I went and ran for no reason at all. Like that's very curious behavior to me. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. I'm not a runner. But I did in my younger days, I bought a treadmill when I was living. I was living in Wyoming. I bought like a treadmill off of like Craigslist, and it made a couple of moves with me, and I would use it here and there. But I much prefer the elliptical. I think that like that's more of a stay in place. I can watch TV while I do this kind of thing.
Abby bought a home stationary bike, not a Peloton, but one from Amazon a few years ago when we had separate places. Now we live together, obviously, and it's ours now. So I'll jump on the stationary bike and watch a couple episodes of Jeopardy at night.
Well,
like that. That'll be my unwind. If I didn't go for a run, I will get on the stationary bike.
Yeah, I like the stationary bike too.
Yeah,
I do. I like the stationary bike. You feel like you're doing a little something there.
You can read while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Too. It's a little easier to do other things while you're doing it. Treadmill, you're going so up and down.
Yeah, you can't read while you run.
No, you can't.
No. So my random question today: how tech savvy are your parents?
Well, okay. In general, not very. But once they learn how to do something, they can do it. My parents might be listening right now. I hope I didn't offend them. But like, I would not. Okay, for example, like when we got our new TV, we got this 50-inch TV because ours broke and it's nice and new. And I set up all the wiring in the back. So I have, the gaming systems all set up and have, the Fire Stick plugged in or whatever, got it all set up and all the wires set up in the back or whatever. I wouldn't probably trust my parents to do that at this point. But like, hey, here's how you do this function on your phone. Here's how you do this thing on the computer. Once they know how to do it, they're good to go. I mean, my mom has paid bills online for 20 years now. So, they're functional. I would say functional is a good word for it.
Because that's, people of our generation. And I'm older than you, but I'm still in that, like, I'm an older millennial. You're solidly in the millennial age group. Often people in our age cohort relate stories of their parents not being able to figure out an iPhone or whatever it is, or every time they buy a new piece of technology, they call you and they make the kids set it up or whatever it is. My dad has worked in computers since I've been alive. He's a programmer, a software developer. He's worked with that stuff, and now he oversees those kinds of projects. But still, his job is being on the computer and programming software, things like that. And my mom has worked in a technology lab at a school since she started as a volunteer when me and my brother were still of like middle and elementary school age. So they have been around computers for the longest. They have been around all the new technology. And there are some things I am certain that my mom knows how to do on like an iPad or something better than me. So that is always a bit of a luxury. I know that when my folks get a new toy, they're not going to have to call me, and I'm going to have to spend 2 hours on the phone setting up their Roku or whatever it is.
My parents recently, within the last few months, got this thing. The Comcast provided it. They had to pay for it and set it up, but it's a call screener. And now when you call them, you hear this automated voice that says, these calls are being blocked. If you actually know these people, hit pound, so that telemarketers and robocalls can't do anything. They just get stuck there for eternity until they hang up. Like my sister had to set it up for them. They're like, oh yeah, we're so excited about this. We can't wait to use it. Do it for us.
If you have a story about having to set up a piece of technology for your parents, or if you have a story about your kids having to set one up for you, hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429.
And while we're getting those stories in, we're going to take a quick break here on the show. We'll come back, talk a little Kansas City Chiefs defense, bringing back one of the longest tenured Chiefs at this point. What is the overall plan on the defensive line? We'll discuss next on 580 Sports Talk. 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. This should have gone in the last segment when we did Random Question Tuesday. Growing up or in school or anything, did you and your friends or you and people you know ever have like a thing you did to each other in the hallway? Like if you saw someone carrying books, you'd go up and knock their books out of their hand or something? Or like you'd tap someone, you'd be behind someone, you'd poke them on the right shoulder, then walk out to the left and see if you could get them to turn their head the wrong way?
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to draw charges on Jake in the hallway all the time, and I got him right now. Yeah, he was coming in. He was outside for a minute. He came back in as I was walking down the hallway back to the studio, and I saw him walking. We got close, and I set a pick, and he charged into me. Okay, usually he sees me doing it, though, and he will stop or step out of the way. This time he clearly put his shoulder right into me, and it kind of hurt because he's still a lot more built than I am. Speaking of football players, the Kansas City Chiefs are bringing back Derek Nottie, the defensive tackle, one-year deal that was announced earlier on today. Don't look now, but Derek Nottie is now one of the longest tenured members of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be his 6th year with the team. A lot of guys don't make it 6 years with the same team, especially the team that drafted them. Maybe with a gigantic free agent deal, you end up at that point. But Nottie has been a very solid player. He's a fairly one-note player. I mean, he's, I guess, not this past season, but in 2021, he did have 3 sacks, but he's never really been an interior pass rusher. He's a space eater and a run stuffer. That's what he's always been. But I mean, he's a fine player. He has one job, and he does that job pretty well. I think this makes an amount of sense for the Chiefs overall. You're probably not going to find anyone who does that job better right now on the free agent market.
I thought it was interesting when I looked at Nottie's numbers that despite the fact that he hasn't missed games, in fact, he's only missed 1 in his entire 5-year NFL career.
Yeah.
His snap count has gone down each of the last 3 seasons. He played in over half the snaps in 2019. He was 54% of the Chiefs' defensive snaps. He's gone from that over the next 3 seasons to 46%, 40%. And last year he played just 34% of the snaps at defensive tackle. And part of that was Colin Saunders, I think, taking some of his snaps as he became a bigger part of the defensive line, defensive tackle rotation, and showing a bit of pass rush juice that I think you've never really been able to count on Nottie for, even though he did have 3 sacks in 2021. But as far as rotational guys go, early down defensive tackles, like you need those guys. You need probably 4. I think the Chiefs ended up rolling out something like 7 guys at defensive tackle this last season.
Yeah.
You need them, and they may as well be guys that are durable and guys that you can rely on.
Well, and the part about the snap counts, I mean, that tells me that the Chiefs really like something he's doing if they've given him a smaller workload year after year, and he still continues to get contract. This is now his 3rd contract with the team.
Yeah. It is interesting that he took a 1-year deal last year and then took another one. A lot of times you see a 1-year deal and a player is able to parlay that into a long-term contract with somebody else. But I think that Nottie is kind of at the point of his career where, you know, he is who he is. Like there's not a lot of upside with Derek Nottie. He is a big body who plays in every game and can help you against the run.
Yeah, I mean, he's a first down player, essentially, because you're not going to have him generally on pass rush downs if you can avoid it. I mean, now you look at it's going to be Karlaftis and Amenahu and Jones and probably Wharton on, you know, a 3rd and 8. That's probably the group who's going to be out there on the line. But, I mean, Nottie serves a purpose. He serves in an important role. He had a nice career for himself, honestly. I was just going to pull up his career earnings. It'll be 5 years, $8 million, so you can probably look at 9.5 or so, 10 million after this year, 6 years. A pretty darn good career for a mid-round pick. So good for Derek Nottie. Yeah, 75th overall back in 2018. This is now, and I mentioned Turk Wharton a moment ago. The Chiefs are running it back to a degree with their defensive line. Chris Jones is back, obviously. Karlaftis, Dana, those guys are back, obviously. You brought back Turk Wharton on a 1-year deal. You're bringing back Derek Nottie on a 1-year deal. We know they signed Amenahu. That's the new addition, replacing Frank Clark. And at some point, I think they will add a body to replace Carlos Dunlap as well. Hell, it might be Carlos Dunlap. If I'm Carlos Dunlap, I'm telling the Chiefs, I will talk to you on August 1st. Until then, do not call me. I am on vacation. I would do that. And honestly, the Chiefs would probably say, you know what? That sounds good to me. Sounds great. Let's do it. They'll find someone to fill that role, though. Do you think the way it is currently constructed, that is enough? Or do you think that you need a higher talent ceiling with that group? Because if you would ask me that question middle of last season, I would say the Chiefs need to do borderline overhauling of this unit because they just need more talent. Now, after how well they played at the end of the year, I think I'm more in a point where I would say spend one of your top 2 draft picks on an edge rusher, but otherwise I'm kind of okay. And I think, too, Brett Veach has done a good job to earn the benefit of the doubt that, hey, if we need a guy mid-season or during camp or whatever, we'll bring in a veteran and we'll be fine, because they did that a bunch last year.
Yeah, they've done that the last couple of years. They've been able to kind of add a pass rusher pretty late in the game, like really late in the game 3 years ago when it was Terrell Suggs. And then 2 years ago, it was Melvin Ingram mid-season. Last year, it was Carlos Dunlap, I think, right before camp. It might have been a little earlier than that, but pretty late in the offseason anyway. But the Chiefs have shown the ability to go out and be an attractive destination at one point or another for a veteran pass rusher, somebody who they can bring in and say, hey, we're not going to burden you with scheme. Just go get the quarterback when we put you in the game on third down.
Yeah.
Just pin your ears back and go. So I think that'll be an option for them. I do think that I would not be surprised if they look in the direction of a defensive tackle in the draft. That feels like somebody they could maybe use a day 2 or a day 3 pick on. Did think it was interesting to note today that Mel Kiper Jr., with his newest mock draft at ESPN.com, has the Chiefs going in the edge rusher direction in round 1 of the draft. And it's one that would make some of our listeners extremely happy because he has Kiper drafting Felix Enudike-Uzomah from Kansas State. And apparently, King Felix had himself a pretty good combine, good performance there,
yes.
Some good measurables, and has worked his way into the late first round of a few mock drafts here and there, including Kiper's. So I think it's going to be an edge guy. Those are day 1, day 2 guys if you really want them to make an impact and not just be a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for the guy to, so we had a text from on our text line from the 75 who asked who's going to replace Colin Saunders as snaps. I think the idea is that those go to Wharton.
Probably, yeah.
Because Wharton got hurt 5 weeks in, but Wharton was starting to get more than half of the defensive snaps in a game.
And remember, we said last year during training camp, we thought Wharton would have usurped Colin Saunders in terms of playing time anyway.
So I think that Wharton is your Saunders replacement, and I think that perhaps a day 2 or a day 3 defensive tackle pick is your replacement for Wharton. Or, the Chiefs were able to patch their rotation together they signed Taylor Stallworth and held on to him for a while.
Danny Shelton
played, I think, 9 snaps, but he was around. The other big guy, Brandon Williams, he was around. So I don't think it's like the highest priority that the Chiefs have because I think 1 through 3 at defensive end, I think they're in good shape with Karlaftis, Dana, and Omenihu. I think they're in good shape at that spot. I think that their top 3 defensive tackles, I don't think they need to look for a starter. Now, if they think there's a starting caliber defensive end available to them, and that would give them the opportunity to maybe kick Omenihu inside on some pass rush downs where he's comfortable playing and created some havoc for the 49ers last year.
NASCAR package.
Yeah. Then, go and get that rotational pass rush piece on day 1 or day 2. Go get Enudike-Uzomah or somebody like that. But defensive tackle to me is probably one they will choose. If they do address it in the draft, it'll be late, and I won't be surprised if they don't.
Very frustrated today that Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah released new mock drafts because literally yesterday I published a mock draft roundup over on our website, 580wibw.com. Please go check it out anyway. They're all from this weekend. I would have added those 2, but I'm not going to publish the same story twice. That's just not very smart interneting. But one of the ones that really stood out to me was from, and I got to find him here, Jeff Risdon, who writes for the Draft Wire, part of the USA Today network. He did a 3-round mock draft. He had Brian Bresee from Clemson going to the Chiefs with the 31st overall pick.
Bresee is really sliding down mock draft boards. There were some early in the process that had him in the top 10.
Yes, and I would be surprised even so if he gets to 31. Apparently, it is a medical. That is the reason why he is sliding.
Yeah, he missed, I think, the whole season or most of the season, not this past year, but the year before that with an injury, and then dealt with some more injuries this past
some
season.
Nagging stuff. Yeah. Now, the Chiefs are going to do their due diligence, and if he is around at that point and the Chiefs say, we trust the medicals, we trust our team, and we think he's good to go, they will take him. You know how I know they will do that? Because they've done it with plenty of players, including one of the best guards in the NFL, who they have right now going into his third year in Trey Smith.
Yeah.
If they trust the medicals, they will take the risk on the guy. Brian Bresee is a top 10 player in this draft. I honestly think so. He may not get taken top 10. It's kind of a weak top end of the draft this year. Like, I think the first round overall is kind of weak.
Mm-hmm.
If you could get him at 31, the Chiefs should jump it. Honestly, even if they are a little bit concerned long term, I'd go get that guy.
He'd be a guy I'd move up to like 26.
Agreed.
To like 25, 26 if he's there, and that's a guy they could go and get. I think that would be worth it.
Because if you don't need another pass rusher next to Chris Jones. I mean, the Chiefs for a couple years with Nadi as a starter made it work with 50% of the snaps as a pass rusher and a space
and
eater.
Technically, that's still what he is. He started all 17 games last year, despite the fact that his snap count was below Saunders' snap count at defensive tackle. Nadi was your starter. He's your first down guy against the run.
So you can make that work, but if you have another guy who can also get after the quarterback, and you could possibly have 4 guys with only 2 edges on the field who can all get after the quarterback, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, you see how far teams like San Francisco and Philadelphia can go with having 4 pass rushers on the field at the same time.
Again, go check out our Mock Draft Monday roundup over at 580WIBW.com. We're going to do it every single Monday up until the draft, which is now just a shade over 5 weeks away. Can't wait for that. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of the show today, we'll get back to the NCAA tournament. Dan's got some numbers on the average age of every roster remaining in the NCAA tournament and some proof that older teams have found a whole lot of success this year in the NCAA tournament. We've also got What Is Wrong With You, and Michael Swain will join us for our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery. All that and more is coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk.
If you haven't
going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you on this March 21st. Thank you so much for being a part of the show with us today. We appreciate it so much. We would also love for you to be a part of the show. You can hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429, or jump into the comments section on our YouTube live stream. That stream is Sports on 580 WIBW. That's the name of the channel. We're nearing 200 subscribers on our YouTube channel, in fact, and we would, again, love for you to go subscribe. It is the best way to see all of our video content. We're doing more and more and more of it. We do the live stream shows. We're doing live post games for all the NCAA tournament games and KU and K-State throughout the year. We're doing the shorts now. They're like the Instagram reels or the TikTok that kids might be doing. And I don't feel a problem saying that because I don't do it, and I feel like I'm too old for it. So I have no problem saying that it's the kids that are doing it. It's similar to that, but they're on YouTube, and your information isn't being sent directly to, like, Mao Zedong. So go check out all of our content that we're posting all the time. Plus, we're going to have mock draft content going back up there. Plenty of stuff for the Royals over the summer. It is on our YouTube. Go and hit subscribe. So look for us on YouTube. Just search Sports on 580 WIBW. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. It costs you absolutely nothing but one click. And then all of our videos that we post and all of our live shows will pop up right there on your recommended videos on your home screen on YouTube. So go check us out. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. If you missed anything from the first hour of the show, including plenty of talk about the Kansas State Wildcats and the Sweet 16, head to our website. That's 580WIBW.com. Hover your cursor over the podcast tab, click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. We actually had a caller at the top of the hour while we were at our national and local news who asked about the longest droughts in Elite Eights / regional finals of all time.
Yeah, the gentleman wanted to know if Kansas State has a record for a losing streak in the regional final round of the NCAA tournament. Historically, that has not been kind to Kansas State. Since they reached the Final Four in 1964, the Wildcats have lost regional finals or Elite Eight games in 1972, 1973, 1975, 1981, 1988, 2010, and 2018. That is 7 consecutive losses in a row in regional final or Elite Eight games. I do not know, have been unable to find out if that is indeed a record, but I have to imagine it's probably pretty close.
Yeah, I'd think so. That's tough. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, Tang is the first coach to get K-State to a Sweet 16. Well, the first time ever in K-State history since they expanded the tournament to get to the Sweet 16 in their first year. And the furthest they've gone since 85 is the Elite Eight. And, well, it's actually been much longer since they've been to a Final Four. I think K-State would like to put up a new banner this year, though.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah,
Maybe,
it would.
I know this is a sensitive topic. I understand that. I do not say this to provoke. I'm not trying to be an instigator. But maybe you put up a new Final Four banner. Oh, man, we only have so much space. Oh, see this NIT banner? It has to come down. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm not. But another Final Four banner would be a great replacement for that one, I think. Just a thought. Speaking of the NCAA tournament, we've talked a lot over the last 2 weeks about the age of teams in the tournament and how important that is and how important it continues to prove to be and why that has informed a lot of our picks for the tournament this year. I think it was a day last week when you mentioned this is the oldest tournament of all time, which is understandable because of the COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
But we have some data and some proof at this point that the older teams are finding a lot of success. And a great example of that is just the list of teams in the Sweet 16 this year.
So John Gassaway of ESPN.com, one of their college basketball writers / analysts, had this on Twitter. I think it was yesterday. The average age of each remaining NCAA tournament team weighted by minutes played. So it's the age weighted by minutes. And so it doesn't mean that, if you're a 23-year-old and you've played 38 minutes a game, then you're, for the purposes of this, you're like 29 years old. That's not quite how it works. It's just, linear weights, and I won't bore you with all the details. But what you end up getting is kind of a picture of just how experienced, how old that these teams are based upon the guys who are actually playing. So it kind of takes the maybe your 5th year or 6th year grad guys who don't play out of the equation, or your redshirt freshmen who aren't playing out of the equation. The oldest team left in the NCAA tournament in the Sweet 16 is San Diego State, whose average age weighted by minutes played is exactly 23 years old.
That's crazy.
They are some old dudes at San Diego State. They are the oldest team remaining in the NCAA tournament. The second oldest team in the NCAA tournament weighted by minutes played, with an average age of 22.86. So 22 years and like 10 months. That would be the Kansas State Wildcats.
That sounds about right.
They are the second oldest, by this measure, team remaining in the NCAA tournament. 2 other teams have an average age weighted by minutes played over the age of 22. That would be Xavier, and that would be Texas, which I'm sure is not a surprise.
No.
Michigan State is the 5th oldest team in the tournament. Other than Arkansas, Houston, and Creighton, all of whom just barely missed the cutoff by like tenths or hundredths, in fact. 13, the other 13 of the teams in the Sweet 16 have an average age of over 21 years. And the reason that that's notable is that used to be, according to Gasaway's research, a pretty reliable number that you could look at and say, oh, if a team's got an average age of 21, they got a pretty good shot of winning this thing, because generally that's how old teams are who actually end up winning the NCAA tournament. And since the COVID year, 2020, when there was no tournament, the 2 championship teams, Baylor in 2021 and Kansas last year, both of them had an average age over 22. So experience has always mattered. It's just that teams are older now, and that is being reflected in the increase in the average age of the championship teams.
It's not really a surprise when you look at K-State being at the top of the list. I mean, Marquise Noel, 5th-year guy. Keontae Johnson, 5th year, or is he technically 6?
I think he's technically 6.
So, yeah. So, older guy. Desi Sills, old. I mean, all these dudes are old guys. You've got sophomores and juniors who really are juniors and seniors. I mean, that's just the era that we are in.
And to use some historic examples so that you understand, like, intuitively, like, what this statistic is trying to say. When we think of one and done teams that have won championships, Kentucky in 2012 and Duke in 2025 are the examples of that. Duke's average age weighted by minutes was 20.1, and Kentucky's in 2012 was 19.7. They are distinct outliers in the modern age for how old you have to be to win a championship. And then Baylor and Kansas moved it even further up the scale, coming as the first 2 champions post-COVID, with players who were exercising, in some cases, a free year of eligibility.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I'm looking at last year's Kansas roster that won the national championship. You had, and this isn't even a catch-all term, because it can mean 5th year, it can mean 6th year, it can mean all sorts of different things. There were, as far as I can tell, 5 guys listed as super seniors last year for KU. Remy Martin, T-Hand didn't play. Cam Martin, Mitch Lightfoot, Jalen Coleman-Lands. Jalen Coleman-Lands was in his 7th year.
Yeah, Jalen Coleman-Lands,
I
think, was legitimately 25 years old.
He was a 25-year-old college basketball player. Lightfoot got real minutes. I mean, he was your backup big in the tournament, and he was in his 6th year of college basketball. Remy Martin was in his 5th year. Ochai Agbaji had been around for a full 4 years. I mean, Christian Brown was one of the youngest contributors on the team, and he was 21 or 20, turning 21. So that, look, I know they always say experience, you want the mix of experience and talent, but I think this supports the argument a little bit more that if you've got part of both, you'd rather have more of the experience, especially the experience of guys who've been through this before. That's what, to me, stands out the most about this K-State team, is so few of these guys have been through this before. Maybe they've been to the tournament, but they've never been through the Big 12 schedule and then a multi-game tournament run. Like, this is very new territory. And even Jerome Tang, he's been a coach for forever, but first time as a head coach, this is new, and being older, more mature in myriad ways, I think has helped them a lot.
Yeah, but of course, the old saw is that by the time, like, people say this even at the high school level about freshmen all the time. Like, by the end of your freshman year, are you really a freshman anymore?
True.
Like, you've played so much and you've been through it, if you've been a part of it, that, you have experience. That experience starts to accumulate right away. It doesn't start accumulating. You don't start at 0, and then once your freshman year is done, it's okay, now you start accumulating experience. Like, you're doing it as you go.
Right.
And I think that's true about NCAA tournament experience as well, is that you acquire it as you go. And these teams in the Sweet 16, regardless of their backgrounds, whether we're talking about guys who are likely one and dones, like some of those dudes for Arkansas, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, or whether we're talking about guys in a 5th, 6th year of college basketball, like Bebe Igiola, who is the oldest player, I think, functionally left in the tournament. I think he might actually be the oldest. We don't know the birth dates for some of Princeton's players, but as far as like guys who get rotation minutes, I think Gasaway says Bebe Igiola is the oldest guy left. And when you're talking about, whether you're talking about him or whether you're talking about freshmen, all of these guys played in high pressure NCAA tournament games just this past weekend and played well enough and managed the pressure and the stakes of it well enough to get here to the Sweet 16. So I think that you get to this point, it may start to matter a little less depending on the matchup. But I do think it's instructive that when John Gasaway first published this list of average age weighted by minutes played, and did it for teams who were seeded in the top 5. So the top 20 seeded teams in the NCAA tournament, of the 6 youngest, 4 of them went home in the opening weekend. And of those teams, only one of them lost to a team that was younger than them. And it was only fractionally, and it was Kansas. Lost to Arkansas.
Interesting.
That was the only team that lost to a team that was younger. Purdue, Marquette, and I'm spacing on the other one. But 4
Arizona.
Yes. 4 of the 6 youngest teams in the top 20 seeds went home early. 6 of the top 10 are still playing. And of ones who are not playing, Indiana is one that got eliminated by an older team. And UConn was also a team that was kind of in the middle and eliminated St. Mary's. So they were very close in age as well. The only teams that were eliminated by Baylor was eliminated by a substantially younger Creighton team.
Yeah.
And Virginia got eliminated by Furman, who was actually probably older than they were.
Probably so.
So I do think that early in the tournament, that has been an edge, that having veterans has been an edge.
But you alluded to this. Where do we hit the point of diminishing returns? Because if you look at the matchups these teams actually have, like Creighton and Princeton kind of factor out of this because they actually play each other. They're 13th and 16th on this list.
Yeah,
they're going to play each other.
Yeah, 2 of the 4 youngest play each other. Also, 4 of the 5 oldest play each other in the Sweet 16. Kansas State's 2nd, Michigan State's 5th, Xavier's 3rd, Texas is 4th.
So here's an interesting question, though, because the matchup then that jumps off the page with this information, the oldest team in the tournament, as you said, that's still remaining, is San Diego State at exactly 23 years old. Alabama is 12th. They're just over 21 years old. Alabama, I think beyond argument, is more talented than San Diego State is. Like, San Diego State's really good, but Brandon Miller is going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft.
Right.
Noah Clowney is a really good player. Javon Quinterly has been a very good player for several years now. The other Noah, what's his last name? The talented player. I'm blanking on it right now for Alabama. But they've got a more talented roster than San Diego State. Do you think this is going to somehow pay dividends for San Diego State? Not even necessarily in terms of winning, but in terms of keeping the game close and competitive, the fact that they've got these older guys. I don't know what the line is in this game. And the spread's not everything when you're comparing how close a game is, but just as a reference point for how much Alabama is favored in that matchup. And I'm pulling it up from FanDuel right now. Bama is favored by 7.5 points. Does the age difference that favors San Diego State make up for any of that perceived difference in their team quality? I don't know at this point in the tournament. It's a genuine question.
Yeah, I think there are circumstances where it might benefit you to have older guys. Like, I think that certainly if you had the oldest team on this list, San Diego State, play against the youngest team on this list, Creighton, which is a potential Elite Eight matchup, if Creighton gets through, gosh, who does Creighton play? Princeton. Right. If Creighton beats Princeton, San Diego State upsets Alabama, the oldest team and the youngest team, then that would certainly be interesting to see in what ways that had an impact. But I think the broader point with this number is that it certainly mattered in the opening weekend. And it certainly foretold some games that a lot of people expected to go one way and ended up going another way, like Tennessee Duke or Michigan State Marquette. Those were really young teams. Duke might have been the other team that was a bottom six, and I think we said Arizona, but I think it was actually Duke. Arizona was also a pretty young team that ended up getting eliminated. But it has historically been beneficial to be one of the older teams left. And even more so the last 2 years where teams on average are older, it has still benefited a veteran Kansas team with an average age over 22 years, weighted by minutes. And Baylor, same thing. So if you want to say 22 is the benchmark, 4 teams hit that benchmark: San Diego State, Xavier, Texas, and Kansas State. So I think that is a benchmark worth watching. It doesn't predict anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't prove anything, but I do think that historically having more veterans has been helpful even when you get to this part of the tournament.
I'm curious when we phase out of the guys in their COVID years. I think we determined that 2025, like 25, 26 might be the first year we have no COVID year players remaining.
So anybody who was a freshman and was redshirting in 2019, 2020, like was 2019, 2020 the free year?
No, it was 2021.
Next
that was
year.
The free year. So like Zach Clemens, KJ Adams, they're the first year without a COVID year.
Okay.
Yeah, because they counted the whole 1920 season.
Okay, so but theoretically, you could have been a true freshman, redshirted in 1920, and then played your COVID year, and then would still have 4 years remaining of eligibility. So that would be 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah. So yeah, this log jam, that might not be the right way to phrase it, but the COVID year affected players, yeah, I think they're entirely phased out, barring like some extreme exceptions for injury and personal hardship reasons.
Yeah.
Those should all be phased out by the end of the 2024-2025 season.
I wonder how this is going to change with that. Like, I would not be, and look, I'm going to be completely blunt with you. The odds I remember this in 3 years are fairly low. But, like, I wonder that first year, are teams that have guys who have been able to sit behind COVID, the teams that have taken the most advantage of guys who have extra years. Kansas last year, great example of it. They were able to, they didn't have to play KJ Adams a whole lot. They didn't have to play, because honestly, if Lightfoot hadn't been there, the backup big would have been KJ Adams for that title run.
Yeah.
For K-State this year, Marquise Noel has an extra year. You have the extra year from Keontae Johnson. You've got these extra years.
Yeah.
I wonder the teams that have taken advantage of this and have managed their roster the best, if come 3 years from now, we get the same teams that are successful now. So I'm talking KU, I'm talking K-State, I'm talking Texas. If we see those same teams who are finding national Sweet 16, national title run kind of success. Because I kind of think the answer is yes.
And it's a certain kind of player who takes that COVID year, right? And by that, I mean a player who does not have an expectation of being a particularly high NBA draft pick. Because, there are 6 seniors on the Kentucky roster that have an extra year, and they asked John Calipari directly about that after Sunday's game, and he said, "Oh yeah, all those guys are all leaving. Like I think they're all going to leave. Like Oscar Tshiebwe coming back for another year. Like who does that help? Who does that benefit? I don't think it benefits Oscar Tshiebwe. So I do think that to an extent, like those kinds of players, those kinds of veterans are not going to hang around, but if you've been in college for this long, the odds might be better that you are not a surefire NBA player, and you might decide, hey, I'm going to take that extra year. We get 2 more years to see kind of how it plays out with the COVID year guys.
No, that's fascinating information. And yeah, I mean, that sways me a little bit more towards San Diego State plus 7.5. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have veterans. It's good to have some relative graybeards on the college basketball scene. That has proven to be the case. And if it is a trend the last 2 years that veteran teams with an average age weighted by minutes of over 22 have won the national championship each of the last 2 years post-COVID, there are only 4 teams like that left, and one of them's the Wildcats.
This is why, and this is more of a general comment than specific data from the COVID years. This is why teams like Kentucky, I think, have fallen. And I know this is not exactly a bold take, but this is why programs like Kentucky have fallen out of national prominence, I think, a little bit. I think
kind of the same deal with Duke, right?
Duke in the exact same spot that, and Duke has adjusted a little bit because they've had, a few older players.
And they went to the Final Four last year. Duke's doing okay.
Yeah.
But Kentucky has lost in the opening weekend back-to-back years now.
3 straight tournament appearances, I think.
I think you might be right.
But when you're John Calipari and you're recruiting guys, when your entire strategy is we're a recruiting machine more than a basketball program, because I'm telling these guys, don't worry about college, you're going to be an NBA pick, and then all your guys are gone within a year, or maybe you only have 1 or 2 guys who stick around, like a Shibwe. You're not able to compete with, teams that have all sorts of grizzled veterans. That's just not a successful plan today in college basketball. And to continue the Kentucky point, they've got the number 1 recruiting class in the country next year. I don't think, right off the rip, why am I supposed to believe that all of a sudden that's going to start working? When we have all this empirical evidence that older teams work better than super young teams, why am I suddenly supposed to think, oh, no, they'll figure it out?
Well, how much of that is a talent issue and how much of that is our coach is starting to run really outmoded offensive sets from the late 80s and we're not adjusting.
That's also true. That's also a key part of it.
Stop running floppy sets. Those are very 1987.
Let's get you a quick timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. On the other side of this break, we've got today's What Is Wrong With You. Michael Swain also joins us in just a little bit on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell?
What the hell?
Let's get to a quick round of What Is Wrong With You before we talk to Michael Swain for Jayhawk Weekly. Our current winner for the week in What Is Wrong With You is the horrible, awful woman from Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, who took money that was intended for a fundraiser or is being raised as part of a fundraiser for someone who is dealing with cancer, and then kept over half the money for herself and said that it was because of the high price of making coleslaw. That was her justification.
This coleslaw cost me hundreds to make.
You would not believe me where I told you I found this cabbage. It is just unbelievable.
The flecks of gold on the carrots.
Awful. My story is a pretty easy one. We are headed down to Florida, St. Petersburg, where we meet a guy who, well, he had a little bit too much to drink and he decided to mess with a car. He said it was a spring brake mistake. That was his justification for costing over $1,000 of damage with a butter knife to the side of a car. This is a man from Missouri, by the way. And he said, yeah, spring brake mistake. Well, this is a college kid, drunk college kid. No, this gentleman is 52 years old.
No, you can't. No, old enough to know better.
So, according to police, the vehicle's owners, a married couple, spotted a man standing near their car Thursday evening, making motions near the driver's side. When the duo confronted him, he laughed and ran off down the street. Upon examining the car, the couple discovered the entire side of their vehicle had been scratched up and had excessive paint damage. Okay, real quick. You would know more than just someone is making motions. You would hear metal scraping on metal.
Yeah, you would.
So, what, you had the music on, volume 100? What is this? So, they found out the entire side of their vehicle had been scratched up and had extensive paint damage. Lying next to the car on the floor was a silver butter knife that had been used to damage the vehicle. The car, which had been parked outside the Toasted Monkey restaurant, sustained over $1,000 in damage. A review of security camera footage yielded a clear image of the suspect, and cops determined that the vandal had put his phone number down on the Toasted Monkey's wait list. After calling the number, police met up with Clifford Edwards, who reportedly, quote, admitted to the crime after getting his Miranda rights and termed the offense a spring break mistake. This is a real estate executive, 52 years old, on vacation, essentially keying a car. And then said, spring break. What are you going to do?
With a butter knife, like he's Homer Simpson. Spring break.
So that's my story for today. What do you have, Dan?
So stupid.
So stupid.
All right, we're going to Penn Argyle, Pennsylvania. Where
Out of Pennsylvania this week.
Yeah, the Florida of the Northeast. Where Slate Belt Regional Police Department has arrested one man, is on the hunt for another accused of setting off explosives in Penn Argyle. Neighbors are fed up with explosions that shake their homes and wake up their children and pets. 69 News spoke with countless neighbors who didn't feel comfortable going on camera, but say these are no normal fireworks. They're much more startling and rather rattle their windows. Many are hopeful this latest update leads to the return of peaceful nights. We've been getting quite a few in the last few months, quite a few reports of loud explosions, says the Regional Police Sergeant Sean Moskella. Slate Belt Regional Police were dispatched to Penn Argyle's Laurel Avenue around 3 a.m. Saturday. Officers didn't find anyone responsible, but Sunday morning they got tips from the citizens of surveillance videos from Ring doorbell cameras and were able to track down two suspects, 57-year-old Joseph Zanetti and 32-year-old Justin Taylor. The video showed Taylor carrying a long black tube, which is commonly used in the propulsion of aerial and mortar shells. Also caught on camera were the men on East Applegate Avenue and the sounds of three loud explosions there. Law enforcement quickly executed search warrants for the home on Applegate and Zanetti's house and seized things, including a pipe with burnt explosive debris, mortar cakes with hundreds of rounds, and other explosive equipment. While police were at Zanetti's home, they say he showed up and admitted to igniting explosives with Taylor. The DA's office tells us Zanetti said he had been drinking and later said the explosion was a mistake.
Yeah, I'll say.
Explosion, singular, is what really stands out to me here, because apparently it's a plural, and it's been going on a while.
Yeah.
Zanetti and Taylor are facing charges of arson, endangering property, possessing explosive material, risking catastrophe, and reckless endangerment. They can't find Taylor.
That's not good.
So, but Zanetti is behind bars.
That's good. Why? It's just a major why story. Why are you doing this? Obviously, they've been drinking. That's a major reason why. I would be so mad. I'm not the kind of person who gets PO'd every single time someone blows up fireworks. Like, whatever, it is what it is. Multiple times, I would have some problems. You wake my kids up, all right, we got problems. We got beef now.
Yeah, you make my dog sad. You make my cats hide. Like, come on, cut this out. Like, I want to understand how it took so long for like police to start investigating this. Yeah, we've been hearing about this for a while, and then we got interested in investigating.
Who's your winner for today?
I gotta go with the guy scratching at a car with a butter knife and saying, "Hey, man, spring break,
Dude. What you gonna do?
Anything goes on spring break. You're 52, sir. You have a mortgage.
Ain't no laws when you're drinking claws, bro." As your bald spot continues to grow.
Not only does he have a mortgage, he is a licensed real estate salesperson. He knows a lot about mortgages. Also, is his face real?
Yeah, I would not be surprised if he had some work done.
He got the highest forehead in the history of the world.
Maybe a little nip and a little tuck here and there.
You could project an IMAX film on his forehead.
Does that beat our story from yesterday?
And then, like, it's like a straight on picture. Like, does he have a nose?
It's not the most flattering.
It looks like his nose is missing. I want to be like sensitive. Maybe he doesn't have a nose.
I think it's just very flat. It's not very big.
It's not a pronounced nose.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's wild. He looks like a Lego man.
Oh my God. Does that beat yesterday's story?
No.
No, it doesn't. That woman is an absolute
the
trash bag.
Facial features I've ever seen.
While we break down this picture, we have to get to a quick break. Michael Swain joins us next on 580 Sports Talk.
If you
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
What a scene in Lawrence, Kansas tonight.
It is time for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan as we finish up the Kansas Jayhawks basketball season. What went wrong in the second round against Arkansas this past weekend, where KU goes from here. And we're now joined for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery, by Michael Swain of Fog.net. You can find all of his great work covering the Kansas Jayhawks at Fog.net. And of course, you can find him as well on Twitter at mswain247. Michael, first thing I've got for you, I think it's a question that we brought up during our post-game coverage, and I think a lot of people have pondered or thought or almost confirmed to themselves at this point. Was Bill Self not being there for that game against Arkansas one of the biggest reasons why things fell apart at the end?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I look at it and say that if Bill Self is there, does Kansas win the game? I do think so, because for me, I look at one kind of specific possession late in the game. About 90 seconds to play, it's a tie game, and Norm Roberts calls a timeout to draw something up. And how many times have we seen Bill Self throughout the years drop a play in that situation that gets KU 2 points or 3 points, or at least a good look? And KU just didn't get that. It was a shot clock violation. And I feel like that was kind of the moment when, someone like myself was like, all right, really got to change the lead to this post-game story I'm writing. And so I do think, I just think game management stuff, the game plan itself, Bill Self can be involved in, and you can think Norm Roberts is really good at, because he is. And he's been very important to Bill Self's staff, but there's also something to be said for in the moment, in the game, when Arkansas is going on that run, do you keep KJ Adams out of the game? And that's the decision Norm Roberts went with. I don't know if it would have changed much to put KJ back in there. I do know that Zuby and Zach were getting carved up by Arkansas. And I just think that some decisions like that, maybe Bill Self handles it the same way. Maybe he does, and maybe it doesn't change the outcome. Or maybe he handles it differently. But I think you can definitely kind of play the what-if game with it, even if you can also acknowledge the fact that, hey, Norm Roberts did a damn good job with that, right? You look at what he did, and taking over in that situation, it's hard probably for the players. And to get everyone playing at a high level, where even for a moment you're up by 12 against Arkansas, it is really a credit to him. So I think you can equally say Norm Roberts did a very good job leading Kansas during a very difficult time, while also saying that, hey, if KU had its Hall of Fame head coach, maybe there's a slightly better chance they make it out.
And to build on that, too, do you think KU played really darn well in the first half, and they were clearly, I think, the better team for, the first 25 minutes or so of the game. But do you think the final 15 minutes when Arkansas put together that run and really started to dominate, was that more about the mistakes KU was making, or was it more because Arkansas suddenly turned it on?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Arkansas is a team that has a lot of talent, and when talent decides to play well, or decides to turn up the energy, it's kind of hard to match. And then on the other side, you can say, hey, KU missed the front end of 1-on-1s twice. That's times where you could have had as many as 4 points during a run where Arkansas basically outscored you by 12 or 13. And you look at it and say, if KU makes that, maybe it stops momentum, where then, they got to walk the ball up the floor and, call a play or something. And maybe it works. But I think you could also say that, yeah, you doing that, you not missing the front end would have certainly helped stop the run and stop maybe the swinging of the tide in one way or the other. So I think it's one of those things where, again, you got to give credit to Arkansas. They started to play well, and they really started to attack KU defensively, where, KU did a good job of not letting them get in the paint. And then I felt like once Zach Clements was in there, they really didn't fear him at the rim, and they attacked. And then when Zuby Ejiofor was back out there, then a few possessions later, they really attacked him in the pick and roll, because then KU's not going to switch 5 with Zuby out there. So then, it forced those guys to tag, and they ended up hitting Jordan Walsh for that big 3 because they attacked the tag man. I think it was maybe either Kevin McCullough or Jalen Wilson. So I think it's one of those where everything combines for a big run like that. But KU certainly controlled its own destiny, if you will, by missing the front end of 1-on-1s on multiple occasions.
Michael Swain of Fog.net and 24/7 Sports joins us here on 580 Sports Talk, as he does every Tuesday at this time for Jayhawk Weekly, which is presented by 23rd Street Brewery of Lawrence. Jayhawks might be out of the tournament, but the 23rd Street Brewery is still all in, bringing you all of the tournament games on television. A great place to sit and eat and drink and be with your friends and watch the remainder of the NCAA tournament or any sporting event. The 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Michael, that's 3 years in the last 5 that Kansas has lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Now, obviously, that stings a little less because the 2 years not in question were a year where Kansas had the best team in the country going into the period of time where COVID shut everything down, and last year when they literally won the national championship. But the second round losses in 2019 and in 2021, in particular, I think the 2021 loss to USC really exposed some deficiencies for Kansas that were then addressed, I think, and used to make the team better and more apt to go deeper into the tournament the next year. What do you think Kansas learned or can learn from losing to this Arkansas team in this second round, and how will it inform the roster building for the future?
Well, KU's bench just flat out isn't good enough. Let's start there, right? Look at the 2 teams KU lost to last and look at their benches. Look at the 6-man. Let's just use that as an example, right? Arkansas had Jordan Walsh coming off the bench. 6'7", 7'3" wingspan. He's going to go play in the NBA next year. Texas had Sir'Jabari Rice, who's the Big 12 6-man of the year. It's a guy that can get his own shot, offers a lot on the basketball floor. Who is KU's 6-man kind of at the guard position? Joseph Yesufu. I think that just tells you everything you need to know about the talent on the bench. It wasn't good enough. And I think you can look at that and say that's the area where I think KU's going to really try to improve this offseason. And you're going to have to see, obviously guys have to leave for guys to come in. So I think there will be some transfer portal movement for KU going out. And I think you'll see KU add some guys that are starter quality. And then I think as a result, you'll probably see someone like Ernest Uday take a big step forward. And maybe he doesn't start next year. All of a sudden you have Ernest Uday on your bench who you feel pretty good about. And maybe a guard like Bobby Pettiford, if he sticks around, takes another step forward. Or maybe one of your guards takes a big step forward this offseason. Maybe someone like Elmarco Jackson comes in and is able to offer that to you. So I look at the bench and I say that's kind of the biggest thing. You just look at what Arkansas was bringing off the bench and what Texas even was bringing off the bench, and it pales in comparison to what Kansas had. So I just think that that's probably the biggest area. And then you could probably look a little bit maybe athletically, just Jalen Wilson against Jordan Walsh. Kind of a mismatch there. KJ Adams in terms of his size at the 5 is a little bit different than what a lot of other schools have. And, as good as Kevin McCullough and Grady Dick are, Grady Dick got picked on defensively at times this year too. So I just think this is one of those things where improving on the wing, or at least just replacing what you had on the wing, is going to be a priority. And then really developing the bench, because we know Bill Self wants to play a short bench, but playing a short bench that isn't very talented, I think, is also a big issue.
You mentioned some of the recruits that are coming in next year for Kansas, but the Jayhawks have hit the portal to a decent amount of success in recent years. Obviously, Remy Martin, instrumental in the championship run in 2022. Kevin McCullough, I have no idea where KU would have been without Kevin McCullough at times this year. And you could argue that he was their best player in a lot of games, a lot of really big games this season. At what spot on the floor? I'm not going to ask you to give me exact names. We don't even know who all is going to end up in the portal by the time all is said and done, or who the big names in the portal are going to be. But at what position on the floor do you think that Kansas might focus on maybe trying to add a college basketball veteran or two?
Yeah, I think the 3 and the 4, right? Because I think you look at the 5 position and Ernest Uday and KJ and Zuby being 3 guys there that I think the coaching staff will feel pretty good about. Obviously, KJ can play the 4 at times, and you saw that in a pinch where he and Ernest played together, and it wasn't terrible. But I think just the 3 and the 4, right? You lose Jalen Wilson and that production, that steadying presence. I think KU's going to go out and get a 4 that can do similar things maybe to Jalen, maybe similar in terms of production, right? Where can they score the basketball? Maybe can they shoot it a little bit better than Jalen? I think maybe. Obviously, replacing his rebounding is going to be so hard to do because there aren't many players at the 3 or the 4 that can rebound like that while also scoring at a high level, right? Jalen was a first-team All-American for a reason. But then you look at the 3, right? Can you find someone that maybe can handle the ball a little bit, can maybe play some really good defense like McCullough? Because you look at the guard position, right? You know DeJuan Harris is going to start. You can put that in pen. Then it's a question of who's going to start the two. Is that Elmarco Jackson? Is that Bobby Pettiford? Are all these guards from the bench going to leave? And then does that leave you having to go to the portal to get another guard there? So I think, like you said, there's a lot that still has to be figured out that will be figured out over the next probably 2-3 weeks. I just look at it and say, I think 3 and 4, those are the biggest spots KU has to fill just to get back to where they were this season.
Finishing things up with Michael Swain from Phog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He joins us every Tuesday on 580 Sports Talk for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. You can find Michael on Twitter as well, at mswain247. This, admittedly, is probably a hard question to answer, Michael, especially fresh off the end of the season. But do you think KU would be better off? Because I'm of the assumption that several of those guys from the bench unit are going to transfer. I don't know about Yesufu or Pettiford or Clements or who it will end up being, but I figure some of those guys, and throw MJ Rice in there too probably, are at least going to consider jumping into the portal. Do you think KU long-term, or at least for the 23-24 season, is better off keeping at least a few of those guys for continuity's sake? Or do you think the team might even be better off trying to almost do a wholesale change for that bench group through the portal?
That's a really good question. I think that it depends on the talent, right? Because if you look at continuity, how much you have to weigh, right? What is continuity worth versus what is talent worth, and what is upside worth, right? And I think the thing you look at with some of these guards, right, you know it's Joseph Yesufu at this point in his college career, right? He's got one more year of eligibility left. You know what he is. Bobby Pettiford's the one that I'd be fascinated to see what this season looks like for him if he doesn't have the injury issues, because the coaching staff is very high on him. So I think it's one of those things where, you know, continuity, how much is it worth? Because you can also look at someone like Kevin McCullough. Yeah, there maybe were some growing pains early on, but he's experienced playing in college. Like, he knows what to expect. And he's played in the Big 12. Like, if KU can find players that have played a lot of minutes at high major schools, then I think you maybe say, okay, maybe you can try and replace them if you feel like those players have more upside than what you have on your current roster. So I think it's one of those questions where I think maybe different coaching staffs would have different answers. And I feel like Bill Self might have the confidence in himself and the coaches to say, you want to know what, maybe we try for more upside and we can make it work in terms of finding the skill set for them and finding the play style for them that makes this whole thing click. Because I think what we've seen over the last 5-6 years is Bill Self's not going to have an ego when it comes to the play style, right? They barely ran any post-ups this year. And you said that 6 years ago that, hey, Bill Self's going to have a year where they have a 6'8" center and they don't post up at all. You'd say, yeah, okay, nice joke, right? So these things just kind of continue to evolve.
All right, Michael, we've got about 20 seconds here. Who is going to win from the Sweet 16 we have, these final 16 teams that are playing? Who's going to win the national championship?
Oh, man. Alabama or UConn. Like, those are the two schools for me that just really, really impressed me. I think that would be the title game. And I have a weird feeling about Alabama. They kind of have that mix of really high talented players, but also some guys that have kind of maybe been around for a little bit. So I will go with Alabama.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty smart pick. I think that's where I'm leaning probably as well. For all of Michael's phenomenal coverage of the Kansas Jayhawks, head to Phog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can also follow him on Twitter at mswain247. He joins us every Tuesday for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery here on 580 Sports Talk. Michael, we appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
That is Michael Swain from Phog.net. This offseason is fascinating to me. The last question I asked about the portal and would you rather keep continuity or completely overhaul it? It's a big risk, and I don't mean this as ill will toward, you know, a Pettiford or a Clements, because I do think there's something there, and same with Rice and Yesufu and all these guys. I would not be opposed to trying to add multiple players through the portal, like 3 or 4 players in the portal. Maybe some older guys, young shooters, whatever it ends up being. I'm okay with some wholesale changes. We have to take a break for the news. We've got more 580 Sports Talk after this.
Rural
Hey now, it's time for the final half hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're off early today because the K-State women are playing in the women's NIT tonight. In fact, K-State basketball is making us get out of the studio early twice this week. We're done super early on Thursday because of the K-State men in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, they got the very first game of the regional semifinals. So a 5:30 Central Time tip from Madison Square Garden means a 4:30 broadcast time on the K-State Sports Network from Learfield, which means that's when we will be off the air so that they can bring you pregame.
Coming up here in this final half hour of the show, we'll get you our 580 Sports Talk headlines, plus we'll wrap things up with the final word. We're still taking your texts. The text line is open, 785-272-9429. And you can comment on the YouTube stream as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. So head on over, click subscribe. It's the best way to find all of our YouTube content. We're pumping out more and more of it every single week. If you're into the mock draft stuff, we're now just over 5 weeks away from the NFL draft. We'll have plenty of that going up over the next couple of weeks. You'll get to see all of our shorts as well, the little 15 or 30 or 60-second videos we do too. All that can be found on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. And you can watch our live stream and comment as well and be a part of the show that way. Let's jump right into it then, Dan. Let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. And to lead things off for the second day in a row, how about a bevy of news from the college basketball coaching world? We will start closer to home with Texas Tech. It was reported earlier today by Jeff Goodman, among others, that Texas Tech is narrowing their coaching search down to a favorite who is already in the state of Texas. He's been coaching in the state of Texas for a long time. His name is Grant McCasland of North Texas. Longtime Baylor assistant, has taken North Texas to some pretty impressive places since he took over there this year. North Texas this season finished 37th in the KenPom. That's really good, or at least through the first weekend of the tournament, they are 37th in the KenPom. That's ahead of tournament teams like Northwestern, Iowa, USC, Providence. I'm really good.
Yeah.
It's really darn good.
Yeah, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing brand of basketball. If you want to watch up and down, fast-paced, high-scoring basketball, this is not for you. They are routinely one of the slowest teams by adjusted tempo in the country, year in, year out. It is very much defense first. It is very much control the tempo, control the speed and the pace of the game. And that has been very successful with the players that Grant McCasland has brought to Denton. And he's got a big tournament win on his resume. They took down Purdue. Was that last year or a year before?
2 years ago. That was the 21 season.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. So, yeah, he's done an outstanding job and really built something stable there at North Texas. And it looks like Texas Tech has decided he's their guy.
Do you know how many teams, without looking, ranked lower in adjusted tempo in the country this year than North Texas?
I'm going to say like 3.
That is 3 too many. North Texas played the slowest basketball of any team in the country. 363 teams.
Oh, boy.
They were 363rd in adjusted tempo. Now, there is a chance that changes at Texas Tech because you can get different athletes when you coach at a school like that. If you go, and I know this is not an apples-to-apples comparison. You know who used to coach, over a couple decades ago now, you know who used to coach a really freaking slow type of basketball? Bill Self.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite Tony Bennett, but it wasn't exactly,
Yeah, coaches
Mike
adapt.
D'Antoni either.
Generally, coaches adapt over time to the kind of players that they're recruiting or the kind of basketball that gets recruits to come play for you and win.
And if you can get better talent, and Texas Tech has proven they can get good talent, and I would imagine this is also good in the state of Texas. Texas, we know, is a football state, but they've kind of emerged as a really good basketball state recently, too.
Yeah.
Guy who's been in that state for a long time. Maybe that ends up helping them. I think that makes a lot of sense, though. And the word is they swung for a bunch of big names. I would assume Rick Pitino among them. Maybe Ed Cooley. Who knows? And they missed on all of them. But, man, I think McCasland made sense from the very beginning anyway. I thought that was the natural fit. So I guess that will probably end up being what happens for Texas Tech anyway. Other coaching news today. Tobin Anderson, who became superstar of the NCAA tournament, the first-year head coach of Fairleigh Dickinson, spent a long time coaching in the Division II ranks at St. Thomas Aquinas in New York. 1 year at Fairleigh Dickinson, gets them to the tournament. They win a tournament game as a 16 seed for only the second time that has ever happened. They defeat Purdue, and now he is leaving. He is headed to Iona, which is one of the better Northeast small school programs in the country. Obviously, that is where he is going to replace Rick Pitino. But even before Pitino, Iona has been pretty solid in the Metro Atlantic for years now. That seems like a good fit for them. He actually was a runner-up for that job 3 years ago when they hired Rick Pitino. Mm-hmm. He wanted the job. They wanted him, but then, hey, if you can get Rick Pitino, you're going to go get Rick Pitino. But now, ends up writing that, and he will be the new head coach at Iona. Fairleigh Dickinson is promoting an assistant. Yeah. Good for Tobin Anderson. I saw some idiot, I think it was Stuart Mandel, what a dope, who said something about how this happens every year. You get one big tournament win, and then someone hires you. Maybe do 2 minutes of research. How long do you think it would take to type into Google, like, Tobin Anderson Wikipedia? A few seconds, and you could see all the success he had at Division II. Yeah. You would know that he already once interviewed for Iona. Give me a break. Please do your research. I'm begging you. The other note from the coaching search today, I believe this was also from Jeff Goodman. Micah Shrewsbury is the lead candidate right now for Notre Dame, but the expectation is that Penn State is going to offer him a lucrative multi-year extension to try to keep him in Happy Valley. That's going to be a tough one to keep. Shrewsbury is a great coach, great dude. I think he really does like Penn State. They had a great year this year. First time in the tournament in a long time, 12 years, and they won a game. You told me this. I didn't know this about him. He's an Indiana guy, though. Like, spent his whole life until he left for Penn State in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, he started as a low-level assistant at some Division III schools, including my alma mater, DePauw University. It was before my time there, 01-03. But that enabled him to make some connections in the state. And one of those connections was Brad Stevens. And that's how he got on at Butler. That's how he got on with the Celtics. And he's grown his coaching career from there. So he's kind of, if he's part of anybody's coaching tree, you'd say Brad Stevens, I guess.
I suppose so, yeah.
Not a bad one to be.
No, not at all.
Did we get to Wichita State?
Oh, we did not, no.
Let's get to Wichita State. Looks like they found their head coach. Oral Roberts' Paul Mills. That is the reporting from Jeff Goodman, who says that he expects that to be official fairly soon, and that Paul Mills, who has been the head coach at Oral Roberts the last 6 seasons, will head north from Tulsa to Wichita to take the helm of the Shockers. Mills in 6 seasons, a 106-84 record, 2 NCAA tournament appearances, including a Sweet 16 berth as a 15 seed in the 2021 tournament. This year, of course, they were knocked out in the first round by Duke, but they ran up a 30-5 record and the first ever unbeaten conference record in the history of the Summit League. Paul Mills played 1 college basketball game in his career. Suffered a career-ending back injury in a practice to the point where he does not sit when he coaches. You will never see him seated on the bench. He has lingering issues from a broken vertebrae he suffered in his back when he was playing basketball at Southern Wesleyan University.
Wow.
Ended up transferring to Texas Tech, got a bachelor's in finance. His Wikipedia is super detailed, by the way, like personal life, like everything. There's lots of anecdotes in Paul Mills's Wikipedia page, but spent the bulk of his coaching career. He was the head coach at a couple of small religious high schools from 1996 to 2002. And in 2003, this may sound familiar to Kansas State fans. 2003, he was hired as his assistant at Baylor from his job as a head coach at a small Christian Academy high school.
How about that?
So, yeah, there's a whiff of Jerome Tang to this story, right?
Yeah.
Except Paul Mills got his crack at being a head coach first. Back in 2017, he was hired at Oral Roberts. That program, I don't believe, was in a very good spot when he got there. And they were dead last in the Summit League, 8-22 when he took over the year before he took over. And they went 11-21 his first 2 years, and then 4 straight winning seasons, 2 tournament berths, and a Sweet 16 since then at a private, I don't know if, or a Robert private school, right? It's a religious institution. It may not be a private school.
No, I'm almost certain it is. Yeah, it's If you really wanted to do some digging, you can find some interesting things
Yes.
about Oral Roberts University.
You can find some interesting things about Oral Roberts.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, it is a private school in Tulsa, founded in 1963. So it's not like there's this long tradition
No.
of successful basketball at Oral Roberts. But
No, if you're listening to this show, you probably overlapped your life with Oral Roberts quite a bit.
yes,
When did he pass away?
Oral Roberts, he
2009. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
2009.
Everyone listening to this show, in all
Yes.
likelihood, has at some point in time overlapped with Oral Roberts.
yes.
Um,
Oral Roberts, famously the preacher that told his followers that God would smite him if his followers did not send him money, and they sent him lots of money. And apparently, God took his time because he didn't pass away until 2009.
So I am reading through. I don't know a ton of Wichita State people. You know more than I do. You know that community much more than I do.
covered the
obviously.
team for 2 seasons. Yeah,
I'm reading through the replies to John Rothstein and the quote tweets of John Rothstein's tweet about this. And there's a handful of people that are saying, yeah, that's a pretty good hire. Like, that makes sense. A lot of out-of-towners. A bunch of Drake fans who were saying, hell yeah, because they were worried Darian DeVries was going to get that job, which I think is a fair worry. And then a number of people who are saying they don't like it. This is a lot like, to me, McCaslin to Texas Tech. This makes a lot of sense, I think. I think it's a good hire.
I do too. I think it's I think it is a good hire. I think Oral Roberts has played an entertaining style of basketball. I think they have obviously proven to be pretty successful. They have recruited some pretty outstanding players and developed some players that were kind of no-name guys. Like Kevin O'Banner went from a no-name recruit to a guy who starred for them in their Sweet 16 run to a guy who was a pretty good Big 12 player. Max Asmus was not really anybody's idea of a big deal recruit, and he became somebody who sees the national spotlight and was one of the top scorers in the country.
All-American honorable mention, I think.
I think you're right. So I think that I'll be interested to see the financials on this, because Wichita State, and I've said this before, there's a lot of want to at Wichita State. There's a lot of desire to have a really great basketball program. It does not have, there's no football. You're not competing with football for NIL money, for donor attention, for attention in the city. Like, you are the big show. All due respect to the Wichita Wind Surge, the big league team, and the Wind Surge are AAA, but the big league team in Wichita is Shocker basketball. They are the big leagues. They are the big show. And there are a lot of deep-pocketed donors, many of them with the last name Koch or adjacent to that, who would love to see winning basketball being played at Charles Koch Arena again and very soon. So there will be a willingness to back the right head coach. And I think you can sell me on Paul Mills. Like, if I've got some purse strings that I want to loosen for my college basketball team, Paul Mills would be the kind of hiring I think I could get behind that. I do. Like, is it as sexy as poaching somebody from like a Power 5 school? Probably not. But I don't think that was necessarily realistic for an American Athletic Conference that is losing arguably its 2 best programs. Or 2 of its 3 best going into the foreseeable future. So I do. I think Paul Mills is a good hire.
I've seen people, and again, this is my only experience is just reading this stuff on Twitter pretty much, but I've seen a couple people who said they really wanted Kellen Sampson, and they don't know that this is an exciting hire, and they don't know how to feel about it. Okay, one, if your argument is, well, Oral Roberts got blown out, it's Oral Roberts. The fact that they've won as many games as they had at this tiny little urban school in a league that's not good. The Summit League is not a good league in terms of just quality of play. To win that many games, to go to the tournament twice in 3 years, to be a 12 seed, that's preposterous. Like, give me a break with that. Yeah, of course, they lost. They lost to Duke. Every player on Duke was twice the size of Max Asmus. Like, what did you expect to happen? Also, I hear Kellen Sampson's name come up all the time. Do we know he's a good coach because his dad is a good coach? There's no reason to believe that we know he's a good coach.
And like, this is the thing historically with the coaches that have been successful at Wichita State. They are guys who have mid-major head coaching experience. Greg Marshall was at Winthrop for, I think it was 8 or 9 years, went to the tournament 6-7 times, like only, I think, won 1 game in the tournament, but Winthrop was in the tournament. They won the Big South every year, and they got to the tournament, and Wichita State hired him to replace Mark Turgeon, a guy they hired out of Jacksonville State after just 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So, like, historically, this has been the route for coaches. Like, it has not been, they have not hired like the high profile assistant. They have not hired, the guy who has had previously success at Power 5 and then got fired.
Yeah.
No, they've hired the up and comer, and that has worked out really, really well for them. And when you add that to the fact that clearly Scott Drew's assistants seem to make pretty good head coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so.
Like, I think it's a good hire. Time will tell. But I think it's a good hire for Wichita State.
I'm not excited about this. Why aren't you excited about a guy who wins tons of games with worse talent than you can get? And now a bad league in the American. I don't get that one bit. I think it's a good hire.
I do too.
Let's move on with a couple more 580 Sports Talk headlines.
Yes, the World Baseball Classic Championship game is tonight. First pitch in about 45 minutes or so from Miami as the United States takes on Japan, who beat Mexico in a thriller last night.
Awesome.
Munetaka Murakami, the game-winning 2-run double in the bottom of the 9th inning to lift Japan over Mexico 6-5. It was an absolutely awesome baseball game with a tremendous atmosphere, and it's going to be a great atmosphere again tonight in Miami. The United States trying to defend its World Baseball Classic Championship from the last time the event was played. That was 2017. Japan trying to be the first nation to win it 3 times after they won the first 2. It will be Arizona Diamondbacks right-hander Merrill Kelly who gets the start on the mound for the Americans tonight. Likely to follow him in the bullpen, Kansas City Royals ace Brady Singer. Everybody else is fresh for the United States. In their last game, they used 2 of their starting pitchers and only 1 reliever, left-hander Aaron Loop, who could be a factor tonight against Japan's left-handed power, including, of course, Shohei Ohtani. But it's a fresh United States bullpen and a lineup that has obviously been red hot for them against a nation that knows how to win international competition and win games like this. Should be a fabulous game. We've been talking about extolling the virtues of the World Baseball Classic. I have the last couple of days. Like, if you like baseball even a little bit, you don't check this out, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's going to be an awesome game.
I didn't watch all of last night's game. I think I tuned in around the 6th inning. It was a great end of that game, though. Thrilling game, great talent. It was a lot of fun. I haven't watched a ton of it. We watched a bunch when we were in Des Moines, but other than that, I haven't seen a lot. But it's been fun. The players really love this. It means something to them, and that's cool. Also, Randy Arozarena, so much fun.
The greatest tournament baseball player of all time, apparently.
Yes, that is a fact. Real quick, before we get out of here, want to send our condolences to the family of Willis Reed for our final 580 Sports Talk headline. The NBA legend, of course, all sorts of folklore about how great Willis Reed was and coming back and all of that, passed away today at the age of 80.
1970 NBA MVP and one of the most memorable moments in NBA history, playing through a debilitating thigh injury in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Everybody's seen the highlights of Willis Reed coming down the tunnel at Madison Square Garden and heard Marv Albert's voice. Here comes Willis! And the crowd goes wild. And seeing the video of Willis Reed in the game, knocking down a couple of jump shots. You know, those were the only baskets of the game for Willis Reed. Just those 2. The 2 that everybody's seen, that's all the scoring Willis Reed did. He held Wilt Chamberlain to 2 of 9 shooting in the first half, checked out for good with about 3 minutes to play in the first half. He'd done all he could do. He'd given everything he could. Walt Frazier took it from there, had 36 points. Knicks won that Game 7 and beat the Lakers in 1970. But it is an all-time iconic NBA moment, and Willis Reed, an all-time great NBA player.
That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll wrap up 580 Sports Talk with the final word after this.
What is the
We've got to hurry up out of here before K-State women's basketball starts. So, Dan, let's get a quick final word.
Good on John Calipari for apologizing to Marquise Noel for calling him a little kid. Apparently, the two called and patched that up. And good on Calipari for realizing that was a jerk thing to say.
If you are going to power rank all of the teams still remaining in the Sweet 16, if you put K-State anywhere below about 7th or 8th, you're just doubting them at this point.
You don't know ball.
I know K-State fans love to play up that angle, but I think you guys might have a point this time. That'll do it for us. We're back tomorrow from 3 until 6. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, we've got K-State women's hoops. After that, until tomorrow, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Thanks for listening to 580 Sports Talk.